All right, let's dive right in. The entire gaming world is absolutely losing its mind over the God of War news. And yeah, the graphics look incredible, but everyone is staring at the shiny new paint and missing the real story. This is so much bigger than just a new game or a remake. What we're actually seeing is the tectonic shift in how Sony handles its biggest franchises.
And the way they pulled it off, Alex, it was pure genius, because they set everyone up for a total snooze fest. The state of play was advertised as the one you could totally skip, right? The official line was literally just updates from our third-party partners.
Right, and we all know what that's code for. It means you're going to get a couple of trailers for games you've never heard of and maybe a release date for some DLC. It's the corporate way of saying, please lower your expectations. They didn't just lower the bar, Maya. They put it on the floor, which meant when the real news hit, man, it felt like a meteor strike.
I was so close to just having it on as background noise while I did other things. And then, right after the last boring trailer, the stream just dies. Cuts to black, no sound, and you could just feel the internet collectively hold its breath. The chats went from sleepy to just explosive, and that's when they dropped the news that changes everything for PlayStation.
So you hear that breathing, right? That iconic Kratos sound, and your brain immediately goes, okay, a little DLC for Ragnarok, cool. But then you look at the screen, and wait a minute, that's not snow. That's sun-bleached marble and blood. And then you see him, no beard, younger, filled with just pure rage. The ghost of Sparta is back.
And we have to be super clear here. This is not some lazy HD remaster. This is a from-the-ground-up, total rebuild of the original Greek trilogy in a brand new engine. But the real nuke, the thing that sent a shockwave through the hardcore fans, was that scream. That was T.C. Carson, the original voice of Kratos, back in the role after a really public and messy split that lasted a decade. That one sound was Sony healing an old wound right in front of us.
Oh my God, the chat was just keyboard smashing and emojis. You couldn't even read it. But while the entire world was freaking out over a trailer for a game that's probably years away, Sony went full Beyoncé on us. They didn't just announce something, they released it right then, right there. It's called God of War, Sons of Sparta. And it wasn't a pre-order, it was live on the PlayStation Store at that exact second. And look at it. It's this absolutely gorgeous 2D pixel art game, like a classic Metroidvania, telling a prequel story about Kratos and his brother. Nobody saw this coming. Okay, so this is where my analyst brain starts firing on all cylinders, because you look closer and realize the main God of War team at Santa Monica Studio didn't make this. It was developed by Megat Studios. They're a smaller boutique studio, and they are like the masters of this high-end retro revival style.
And Alex, the price, you have to talk about the price. $29.99. $30 for a brand new, first-party God of War game. In a world where every big game is $70, that price isn't just a price, it's a message.
It's a huge message, and it's a very, very smart business experiment. Look, making those massive AAA games takes 5, 6, 7 years now. It's just not sustainable. You get these huge content deserts between releases. This is the solution. This is the AA renaissance, using smaller, expert teams to make lower-cost but still super high-quality games that keep you hooked on the franchise, and frankly, make a ton of profit. And it's a strategy that is already working. Sons of Sparta is topping the charts. But okay, let's circle back to that massive trilogy remake. Because just making a 20-year-old game look pretty today, that actually creates some really big problems you might not think about at first. Problem number one is purely technical. I'm calling it the camera conundrum. The new games have that tight, over-the-shoulder camera that makes combat feel really visceral and personal. But the old games, they used these wide, almost cinematic, fixed camera angles to show you just how massive everything was. How do you fight a Hydra the size of a skyscraper if the camera's glued to Kratos' back? You can't. They're going to have to build some kind of smart hybrid system that knows when to pull way back for those epic moments. And that tech problem leads straight into a much messier, much more complicated cultural one. We have to be really honest with ourselves about who the original Kratos was. He wasn't a troubled anti-hero, he was a monster. A straight-up villain that we played as. I mean, this is the guy who burned an innocent man alive just to solve a puzzle. And that puts Sony in an absolutely impossible position. It's a total tightrope walk. If they soften him up, if they tone down that brutality to fit a modern 2026 audience, the old-school fans will lose their minds and accuse them of rewriting history. But if they show it exactly as it was with today's graphics,
Woo boy. They risk a massive mainstream backlash for platforming a character that is, by today's standards, pretty irredeemable.
But they have to show it. That's the whole point. The entire reason the new God of War story arc has so much emotional weight is because we know what he did. We know the monster he's desperately trying not to be anymore. His redemption arc means absolutely nothing if you go back and pretend he was just a misunderstood hero all along.
And that's the technological paradox, right there. On the PlayStation 2, the violence was so blocky and stylized, it felt abstract, almost like a cartoon. But you take those exact same animations and render them in photorealistic Unreal Engine 5, and suddenly it's not fun and arcadey anymore. It could become genuinely disturbing. You cross this line into what I call the Uncanny Valley of Violence. Okay, so let's just put all the pieces on the table, because this is wild. You have two different actors playing Kratos. You have two totally different kinds of games, a 2D side-scroller and a huge 3D epic. And you have two completely different business models, all for the God of War franchise, all happening at the same time. So what is the grand strategy here?
The grand strategy is what I'm calling the two-track franchise model, and it is absolutely brilliant. You have track A, which is the legacy track. That's the Greek saga, the nostalgia, the pure, over-the-top action with TC Carson. And then you have track B, the prestige track. That's the deep, narrative-driven, Game of the Year winning stuff with Christopher Judge.
Exactly. They get to serve both audiences. They can give the action junkies what they want while continuing the deep story for the other fans, without compromising either one. This is Sony finally figuring out its secret weapon. Microsoft has Game Pass, Nintendo has Mario and Zelda. Sony's superpower is this incredible vault of classic games, and they are finally weaponizing it.
And just think about what comes next. If this dual-track AAA model works with God of War, and I mean all signs point to it being a huge success, the floodgates are going to burst wide open. Fans are going to demand this exact same treatment for Bloodborne, for Sly Cooper, for Infamous. This could be the beginning of a huge revival for so many beloved series.
And you know, for me, that's the most exciting part of this whole thing. This isn't just about one game. It could be a blueprint for a healthier, more sustainable industry. A world where a cool $30 pixel art game can thrive right alongside a $200 million epic. It means more variety, more creativity. It means we might actually get weird, interesting games again. How cool is that?
But I will leave you with one final thought to chew on. Back in the day, the blurry graphics left room for our imaginations to fill in the details. So I have to ask, is there a cost to this perfect 4K clarity? Will seeing our cherished memories rendered so flawlessly remind us why we fell in love with them? Or will it just reveal that maybe some ghosts are better left as fuzzy, half-remembered legends?